My name is Diego Rivera. I am the Director of Jazz Studies and Associate Professor of Jazz Saxophone at the Butler School of Music, University of Texas at Austin.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for sitting down. We're excited because you're going to Japan.
Yes.
You're taking the jazz orchestra to Japan.
Certainly excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's an amazing opportunity for our students. And, this is something that I had wanted to do kind of when I first got here. Jeff Helmer, when we had talked about where the program was going and, some of the potential activities that we could engage in, he had mentioned that the jazz program unfortunately had 2 trips canceled on them.
Oh.
They had a trip to Cuba planned, and there were some, administrative difficulties. This was back in 2016, so they were unable to go for a number of reasons. So they regrouped and gathered and were able to put together some events and some more fundraising, and then they had planned a trip to Brazil. And of course, this was in 2020, where, I think everybody kind of hit the collective pause button.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, these students had experienced 2 canceled trips. And an international trip of this size and this scope was certainly appropriate and well-timed. So when I got here, I began kind of putting out feelers and thinking of something significant that we could do with our students in our program. And at my previous institution, I had done a couple of trips to Japan, amongst some other international trips. And they're really just an amazing opportunity for some of our students or any students in the program to see how the music that they're studying exists really around the world and how it's received. And it gives them a unique perspective on the things that they're studying and the things that they're working on. And so I'd done a couple of trips to Japan. I traveled to Japan pretty often. So I thought it was almost a no-brainer. So we worked with a promoter in Japan, and he helped kind of set up a tour of various spots, and I have some pre-existing relationships with some folks. So we're very excited. It's gonna be wonderful.
Awesome. I think when most people think of Japan, they don't think of jazz. So talk about why Japan, and when you said you've been there multiple times. Mm-hmm. What is the jazz scene like in Japan?
Well, jazz has a long history and a very, very strong presence in Japan. Some would consider jazz to be the biggest market and fan base for jazz outside of the U.S. This started, I would say, like in the 1920s. When you had a lot of U.S. servicemen and Navy and things like that, jazz had kind of made its way to Japan. And jazz was still kind of in its infancy, but it made it into neighborhoods and areas of Tokyo, like Ginza, which is the very popular shopping district and still is today, and also a hotbed and a hub for nightlife. So jazz made its way into the clubs there. Around the beginning of the Second World War, it kind of had a setback.
There was some stuff going on.
There was some stuff. There was some tension. There was a draft.
Yeah.
And we felt a draft in the room, certainly. Yeah. But after World War II, jazz seemed to kind of have a resurgence in this proliferation. And what we started to see were not only where the jazz scene, populated by primarily, American jazz musicians going over and playing, but you also started to see this wave of Japanese jazz musicians who rose to prominence quite quickly. Probably the most celebrated jazz musician from that era, from the early, collection of jazz musicians to come up to the States, is a big band leader and composer by the name of Toshiko Akiyoshi. She made her way over to the U.S. and eventually studied at Berkeley and had a big band in New York for many, many years and still doing some things that really establishes her presence as not only one of the most celebrated and accomplished Japanese jazz musicians, but really just jazz musicians in general. And so, the U.S. and Japan have always had a good relationship in terms of, musicians going over there, musicians coming over here, and even to this day, there are a lot of fans of jazz music who really embrace and take in all they can from American jazz musicians going abroad and going over to Japan and sharing their music and performing. And for the students, it's really an interesting sort of experience, because students begin to learn what they almost take for granted by being here, in the birthplace of jazz. In traveling over to Japan, they see some of the cultural concepts that may be elusive to Japanese jazz musicians that we sometimes take for granted here. Things like the legacy of the blues. Now every culture around the world has some sort of music or some sort of outlet, emotional outlet through music. In the U.S., we just call it the blues, but it's called whatever it is everywhere. We're not exclusive to that feeling, but the way in which we express that feeling is very uniquely American. And I don't think students fully realize how unique and how special it is until they go abroad and they realize, wow, this is somewhat of an elusive concept. The other being, the way we interpret rhythm, as jazz musicians, we call that swing. Mm-hmm. So the concept of swing in the blues, although Japanese jazz musicians are very accomplished, the way in which that we play that and the way that we kind of nurture that is unique. And I think students visiting will get a sense of how precious and how unique it is to fans and to other scenes around the world.
Yeah. And what's so cool about jazz is that, like other, if classical music, if a classical ensemble was going to Japan, they'd play one concert. Mm. But you guys are playing a lot of concerts. Yeah. Right? Lots of shows. So talk me through some of these shows you're going to be playing.
Well, there's a balance of universities. We're going to a high school and then jazz clubs. So we're going to visit about 2 to 3 schools in Tokyo. We'll make our way over to Osaka, where we'll play a jazz club, a side-by-side concert with 2 university ensembles. We'll come back to Tokyo, play another jazz club, another university, and then we're going to go finish up by going to Chiba, which is right outside of Narita. And the high school that we're playing with there is one of only 2 high schools from outside the United States that have been invited to the essentially Ellington competition in New York City, which is celebrating the 30th anniversary. So Tamisada High School is a pretty historic and pretty legendary program in Japan. And so our students are going to get a mix of all different types of experiences. We're going to have cultural exchange and do side-by-side concerts, can have workshops with some of these university students. So in all intents and purposes, there's their Japanese peers.
Yeah.
So they'll get that in the academic setting. Going into the club, obviously, is another type of experience, a different type of energy. Playing not necessarily just for each other in an audience in an academic setting, but in the club where the music really, really thrives, and there's a different level of excitement. So
the audience might be a little bit more honest too, right?
Very honest, very honest. And then being able to pass our knowledge on to the next generation of Japanese jazz musicians by visiting a high school. So we're really excited about all the different opportunities and all the different ways that they're going to interact with the jazz community in Japan.
What does the music education look like in jazz? You said the high school is very accomplished. How do they do things differently than we do things in that kind of K through 12?
I think it's different, maybe perhaps only for Japan, but a lot of the more successful programs in Japan, they modeled their program the way jazz pedagogy has existed in jazz culture. And that's really kind of characteristic of what we do here at UT. When I came here, I said, well, I don't know if we do jazz education as much as we teach jazz culture. And jazz education has always been a part of jazz culture. If you go back to the first relationship in jazz music with our first great celebrated jazz musician, Louis Armstrong, he learned by playing in an ensemble with Joe King Oliver, who was his mentor. And so right there, the seed was sown, and it carries on generation to generation to generation. You go all the way through the history of the music. You have, Charlie Parker that raised Miles Davis, and then Miles Davis helped to mentor John Coltrane, and John Coltrane went on to mentor, McCoy Tyner. McCoy Tyner went on to mentor Michael Brecker, and it just goes on and on and on. So this legacy of mentorship is something that's very sacred and very important to jazz education under the umbrella of jazz culture. And so the more successful programs in Japan follow that model. So a gentleman by the name of Masaki Shinohara is the sensei, or he's the mentor, the lead mentor there at Tamisato High School. And he's just an incredible musician and just an incredible individual. He teaches his students a lot about the history and the legacy. His students are really, really accomplished jazz musicians. They understand the music of the great Duke Ellington and Count Basie with a very serious level of depth. And not only that, but it's really a culture. I mean, the times that I've been over there, and I think even on this trip, he'll have a concert where he has middle school students. He has 41 middle school students playing in a jazz band.
Which is like 6th through 8th grade,
oh,
right?
Man.
Young.
Yeah, and they're swinging, and
really?
They play with dynamics, and they play, very unlike many middle school experiences.
No Star Wars.
No. But they're playing Take the A Train, and and then you have a couple levels of high school students, and then he always has almost like an alumni band. So students that have left the program, started their careers, or doing something else, they seem to come back and kind of participate in this alumni band. They just can't seem to get away from it. And so I think the more successful programs have that. It's built around jazz culture. So the best examples of jazz education, the best instances of jazz education are really firmly a part of a strong and rich jazz culture.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. You're not just doing the jazz clubs, but you're also doing that stuff. Because I'm assuming some of the students in your ensemble will actually go into music education. They'll go into K through 12, right, and
Certainly.
teach. So they'll see what the absolute top looks like, and maybe mimic it in Round Rock or wherever they end up.
Wherever, even in Japan.
Maybe even in Japan.
The first time we took an ensemble as my previous institution. We took an ensemble over there, and we had a vocalist who was just floored by the community and the culture and the scene. I mean, he had never left Detroit. And as soon as we got back, he graduated, and then he ended up moving to Tokyo, where he lived for over a decade.
Wow.
And so it was really transformative, and it completely changed his life. So, and that's really one of the benefits, and one of the reasons that we do these sort of things is you never know what's going to kind of like turn on that light bulb for a student. You never know which opportunity is going to, be, in a very literal sense, transformative and life-changing.
Yeah.
It's really going to be interesting to see how these students and how our students kind of take in this whole experience and how it changes their world perspective. On things like education, on things like just their profession, playing jazz music, and really understands the importance of mentorship and using jazz to become a world citizen. Jazz is one of those things that really breaks through all the language barriers, and our students. I'm excited for our students to kind of discover that. Two musicians may not even share the same language, but if one of them starts playing a blues, the other one knows what to do. Everybody knows what to do. And the way that they play, certain musical references, you can tell a lot about the way a musician plays, and those sort of experiences are just priceless. And so I'm excited for our students to have those.
Yeah. And how is the logistics for something like this? I'm assuming you have to like kind of prepare beforehand musically, but then also just how do you get everybody over there? How do you get them from one place to another? How does all that work?
A lot of planning, a lot of meticulous planning. Having a tour promoter, Tomoki Sasa, who runs his own promotion company, Spice of Life Jazz Productions, is someone who's been on the scene. I believe he's in his 70s now.
Wow.
And he's been on the scene in Japan promoting concerts and promoting things like this. I first met him. I'm also a part of the Seiko Summer Jazz faculty. And it's a program that started around 10 years ago. We're celebrating our 10th year. The idea was taking American jazz musicians, primarily from New York City, bring them into Tokyo to teach a group of musicians, kind of around 20, a full big band with a couple rhythm sections, for a week-long intensive in jazz education. And Sasa-san just absolutely, every year he puts together an absolutely wonderful, brilliant, just really artistically, wonderfully, just beautifully hooked up tour and residency there for teaching, but also he books tours with the faculty band around. So when I thought about, well, who do I want, to help me organize this? I mean, it was an easy call. And, so we worked together on the sort of scope. I wanted to make sure that we did some side-by-side concerts with universities. I wanted to make sure that we got some club experience. And Tamisato High School was also one that was, let's figure out how to make this happen. So
yeah.
That was an easy call. And one of the other things that's really encouraging was everybody was really, really excited. It took very little convincing. It took very little negotiation going back and forth. I mean, everyone is really excited in Japan to welcome us, and we're certainly grateful and certainly going to perform our hearts out and take in all of the experience of sharing this music with them.
Awesome.
With the Japanese students.
Yeah. Have you warned any of your students about the food, that it's quite different over
there?
there?
Well, I mean, I've told them there's a couple really good Japanese restaurants in town. I said, go there and figure out what you like. And then, but the food is incredible. My wife is originally from Thessaloniki, Greece.
Okay.
And my two favorite cuisines are Greek food and Japanese food.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many little things that I'm excited for them to experience. And it's a long tour. We'll be there 10 days. We take off from Austin on May 20th, and then we come back into town on the 31st. And when I explained that to the students, and they said, but you said it was 10 days. And I was like, when you cross the international date line, we lose a day, or we're going into the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was a, wild concept for our students. The future. Wow.
Yeah, we're going to the future.
Future.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be shiny and
yeah,
people are going to wear jumpsuits. And
so what kind of rep are you planning to play over there?
We're doing kind of a lot of what we've done all year. We build a pretty significant book every year. I think I just did a count. There's probably around 80 to maybe close to 100 pieces that we've read and or performed this year. So we're going to get together before we leave, right sometime in between when the school year ends and right before we jump on the plane to kind of solidify a book. We'll do a wide range of things. We're gonna do the things that we think best represent our program and what we do best, and that's swinging, soulful. Ellington is certainly a staple of our band and our program. When I got here, it was important that I presided over a program that knew how to play Ellington honestly and correctly. It's similar to, there are right and wrong ways to play Beethoven.
Yeah.
There are right and wrong ways to play Ellington. We were going to be on the right side of this. So,
yeah.
A lot of things that are based in the tradition. And we also have, some wonderful student composers, and we have some wonderful student arrangers. We're going to bring some of that music over, and so we're going to see. The good thing about this band is that it functions like a professional band. Whatever is in the book, we all know that it's fair game. So, they spend some time making sure that all the tunes in our book at any given time are in good shape, or at the very least don't take very long to kind of put back together. Mm-hmm. So it'll be like a professional tour with a book and a selection full of tunes, and we'll play kind of based on the audience and based on the environment. We'll play what works, and we'll be swinging for sure.
Yeah. So my last question is, a lot of people that watch these videos and go on our website and whatnot, they're not in college yet, and they're looking at this and being like, that's where I want to be. So they're in high school, maybe even middle school, and they're like, that's the dream. I want to go to Japan someday. And like, what advice do you have to high school students, maybe even middle school students who are first kind of learning their instruments, but they really have a passion for jazz and they really want to go that route?
Mm-hmm. In order to study jazz, you really need 3 to 4 important concepts, important things to help your education. One, you need a mentor. It's important to get a mentor. It's important to find a mentor that's interested and invested in your growth and in your learning experience, in your learning progress. Somebody who's going to, kind of curate the things that you need, and not necessarily just playing to your strengths, but also putting things in front of you that challenge you, that bring up some of the other levels of your musicianship. So, while addition, helping you find your voice, helping you discover your voice, rather. I believe every musician has their voice. I don't necessarily think that anyone finds their voice. I think every student, every musician does something better than anybody else in the world. The best mentors are the ones that help you find what that is and nurture them. And, we have outstanding faculty here. Everybody on our faculty is really invested in helping those students discover what it is that's unique about them, while at the same time being a part of the legacy and the culture of jazz music. So a mentor is really important. Finding opportunities to play. It's extremely important that you find opportunities to play, because there's only so much that the practice room is going to give to you after a certain point. You really need the experience of playing this music and performing this music, which is why we've, really upped the number and increased the number of performances that our students do. I mean, we have the combo series at Mozart's, where our student combos are performing every Wednesday throughout the school year. That's been an amazing experience.
Nobody performs, no ensemble performs as much as you guys do in this building. Yeah,
we're doing it because we know how important it is. And for the teachers, it's a different experience when you're conversing with a student that has a performance, trajectory, or that they perform a lot. It's a different conversation when talking to someone that doesn't perform at all. Mm-hmm. You can connect with them. Some of the things that you say and articulate, they resonate with somebody that plays a lot of gigs. Yeah. As opposed to someone that doesn't play a lot of gigs. So it's made our teaching a lot more effective. But yeah, it's part of the outreach of our program, a part of the mission of, taking our music and taking what we're doing here at the Butler School outside the walls of the university. So the Mozart's residency provides a really important part of our outreach component. And in addition to, the Mozart's thing, we have outstanding guest artists that we bring in. We brought in Branford Marsalis.
That was incredible.
Terrence Blanchard, thank you. And, Michael Dees and Lewis Nash and Carl Allen and, so many great musicians that we've been able to bring here. And we have more planned, in the future. The third thing would be listening. It's important to listen to the music. We have such an advantage in jazz music that we can listen to the creators of the music and listen to everyone that's contributing to it. Yeah. Jazz music kind of grew up with recording technology. I mean, think how different a symphony orchestra would sound if they could hear the premiere performance of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it would change so many things about it.
They didn't even have metronomes back then. No. We don't even know how fast it was, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we have such an incredible resource, and it's important that we take advantage of that. And then the fourth thing is, like, you have to have a community. It's important that you find a place that has a community that's welcoming, that's competitive, that's challenging, that's that keeps everyone accountable, but also, champions one another. I mean, our students genuinely root for one another.
They do.
It's an incredible environment to be a part of. So those 4 things, I mean, are what you should look for in a program. If you look at those 4 things and look at what students have done as a part of their experience or what they've done after they've graduated, that'll give you a pretty good sense of what your experience will be and how you'll turn out, as a result of being a part of somebody's program.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down. We can't
My
wait
pleasure.
to see all the great stuff coming out of Japan. And yeah, you're gonna have a busy summer. So you're going to Japan, and then are you coming back and then going back?
I'm taking this. We're taking the students in May, and then I'm coming back. Well, we're all coming back, and then I'm going back with the Seiko summer jazz faculty in August.
Oh, okay.
And celebrating our 10th year of the camp.
Yeah.
And then,
so when they say summer vacation, it's not really a vacation for you. It's
what's that?
Yeah.
I've heard of those.
Yeah.
I've heard of those. I think a leprechaun told me and mentioned something with his pot of gold. But yeah, it's it's a labor of love.
Yeah.
I chose to do this, and when I started in music, I knew if I could have a life where I had music in my life every day, that would be a success.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think I thought I'd be doing this.
Yeah.
Directing a jazz program. I knew I wanted music or music-related things in my life every day, and so that's been a goal of mine, and it's really been a dream come true. So it's hard to balance that with family and just and things, important things like sleep. But yeah, I'm thoroughly excited to be doing what I'm doing and have a life in music.
Yeah. Well, you're obviously very passionate about it. So, and I appreciate it because we're recording this. It's like 9 a.m. So I know you're a jazz. You were out at the club last night with the students, right?
Yeah.
So,
we closed up Mozart's and I'm gonna head to Fort Worth to do a mini Texas tour over the weekend. So
I appreciate it. Anytime you can get a jazz musician here at 9 a.m., they're passionate about what they do. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.